Hello, this is David Austin with the BBC News. A French court has found the telecoms firm Orange and its former chief executive Didier Lombard guilty of moral harassment over a spate of suicides among employees. 35 staff took their lives between 2008 and 2009. From Paris, Hugh Schofield.
This is seen as a landmark case. For the first time, a major French company has been found guilty of bullying its staff, not via the actions of individual managers, but via its general economic strategy. At the time, the newly privatized France Telecom desperately needed to slim down and seek out new skills in order to fight off growing competition in the sector. The company set out to shed 20,000 jobs, 1 in 6 of the workforce. But in doing so, the court found, applied pressure on workers that went beyond what was legal.
The British Parliament is debating historic legislation that will end the country's membership of the European Union after 47 years. The Prime Minister said the bill would reinvigorate the nation, but the opposition leader, Jeremy Corbyn, said it would hardwire the risk of Britain leaving the EU without a trade agreement next year. Rob Watson assesses the government's plans.
He clearly said we're not going to align with EU rules, and that to me means a harder Brexit, and he's certainly not envisaging Parliament having much of a role in negotiating it. The other thing, of course, was this insistence that, look, the new relationship with the EU has got to be finished. We've got to have that all decided, signed off by the end of 2020, and you can take two views of that. One, which is Mr Johnson's view, that it'll concentrate minds in Europe. The other, that it's a catastrophic negotiating error, and exactly the same one that Theresa May made, and that once you set the clock ticking, you hand all the negotiating cards to the EU.
Dozens of people are reported to have been killed in 24 hours of heavy clashes between Syrian government forces and their opponents in the province of Idlib. Monitors said hundreds of airstrikes and bombardments had targeted rebel-held territory. They said most of the dead were combatants, but that 11 civilians had also been killed. Opposition politicians in Guinea have strongly criticised President Alpha Conde's announcement that he wants a referendum on allowing him to remain in power. The details from Will Ross.
Fode Ousou Fofana of Guinea's main opposition party described the president's announcement as a constitutional coup and a fraud. Changing the rules to stay in power was treasonous, he said. Even though 81-year-old President Alpha Conde hasn't yet said he wants to run for office again, Guineans are in no doubt, and that's why they've been demonstrating. The international reaction is split. America and EU countries are likely to keep pushing for a peaceful transition of power, but Mr Conde appears to have the backing of Russia. It's seeking to deepen its political and military ties in Guinea and elsewhere across the African continent.
Will Ross reporting. World News from the BBC. There have been more protests in India over the controversial new citizenship law. It fast-tracks citizenship applications for refugees from neighbouring countries, but excludes Muslims. This report from Pratiksha Gildial.
Thousands of people protested peacefully after Friday prayers at one of India's largest mosques, the Jama Masjid, in the old quarter of Delhi. But violent clashes were reported between police and demonstrators in several cities across the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Police used batons and tear gas to disperse crowds. Mobile and internet services have been suspended in parts of Uttar Pradesh and West Bengal to prevent people from organizing protests.
The Dutch Supreme Court has upheld a ruling that gives the government until the end of next year to reduce greenhouse gas emissions faster than planned. The judges backed a move by the environmental campaign group Agenda to commit the country to a 25% reduction on 1990 levels by the end of next year. The Netherlands is currently likely to miss the new target by around 2%. The president of Kazakhstan, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, has proposed dropping a virtual ban on public rallies. Unveiling what he called serious steps towards reforming the political system, he proposed making it easier to form political parties and relaxing libel laws that have been used to silence dissent. But rallies will still need official permission. Boeing has launched its new Starliner capsule on an unmanned test flight to the International Space Station. The US wants to use the craft to send its astronauts there for the first time since the last shuttle retired in 2011. The Americans have been using Russian Soyuz flights to reach the station since then. Both Boeing and SpaceX are developing new rockets and capsules. And that's the latest BBC News.